We began to hear this week about the Babylonian exile, or the beginnings of the Babylonian exile, when the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, fell, when Jerusalem was conquered, and all of the people, at least anybody of any kind of influence or usefulness to the Babylonians, was deported. One cannot overestimate the catastrophe that this was. It would create such a deep rocking of the foundation of Israel's faith that it would take them the next 70 years of exile to come to some kind of terms with what had happened, to come to some kind of an understanding of what had occurred. And we experience this. Maybe you are experiencing this right now. In this time of pandemic, maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe the industry in which your job was has been lost, or at least crippled. And not to be the bearer of bad news, especially talking about the gospel, which is good news, there is more yet to come. The crisis that our world is facing is far from over. There will be more developments. There will be more hardships to come. And what we see in the book of Lamentations is the experience of a people crying out to God from the midst of a kind of suffering that goes from bad to worse to desperate. And we hear about mothers holding their children, languishing in the streets, holding their babies as their babies starve to death because there's no food. It's an awful, awful sight to imagine. How bad will things get for us today? No one knows. But suffice it to say, things are already bad. And they will almost certainly get worse. So what is a Christian to do? We hear this gospel today about a foreigner, a pagan, a Roman centurion, one of the occupying forces of Israel at the time of Jesus, and his servant is sick. And yet somehow he has recognized that in Jesus there is one he can trust. And Jesus points out, not in all of Israel have I encountered such faith. Think of the number of times Jesus would visit a community, and because of their lack of faith, he wasn't able to do much for them. Remember, faith really comes down to, in the practical realm, trust. Do you trust Jesus enough to allow him to do something for you? If you trust him enough, he will lead you to where you need to be. He will provide for you what you need, provision. He will give you what you need to receive. He will tell you what you need to know. But if you get so wrapped up either in anxiety or in your own need for control or your own desires for power, especially, is dangerous here, what can Jesus do for you? Remember where it was the worst for Jesus? It was in Nazareth, his hometown. These people who encountered him and said, who does this guy think he is? We know his father, we know his mother, we know the situation. Who is he to preach to us? And because they would not trust Jesus, in fact, because they were so offended over him that they were ready to hurl him off a cliff, there was literally nothing that Jesus could do for them except heal a few sick people and leave them behind. My brothers and sisters, we do face a dire situation. But what is certain is that whatever may come, it will not be as bad as Jesus deciding that there is nothing he can do for us except leave. Leave us to our own devices. Leave us to our sin. Leave us to our desperation. Leave us to our suffering. In fact, that is the one thing, the absence of Jesus, the absence of God, that could make any suffering, no matter how bad, orders of magnitude, rather infinitely worse. Do we know what's coming? No, we do not. Can we trust Jesus in spite of it? Absolutely. If we trust Jesus, will everything work out in the end? Yes, it will. Will we trust Jesus? Only time will tell, and only you can decide.